Vivian spent 3 years scrubbing the floors of the Sterling mansion, enduring sneers from her mother-in-law and silence from the man who promised to protect her. To them, she was nobody, just a placeholder until someone better came along. They thought they had broken her spirit. They were wrong. They didn't know that the orphan they treated like a servant was actually the sole heiress to the Vanderhoven diamond empire. And tonight she isn't coming to serve dinner. She's coming to buy their lives. This is the story of how one woman turned her humiliation into the most expensive revenge in history. The sound of a china teacup shattering against the marble floor echoed through the hallway of the Sterling estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. Vivian, look what you've done. Vivian flinched, dropping to her knees instinctively to pick up the shards. It wasn't her fault. Beatrice Sterling, the matriarch of the family, had deliberately nudged the table as Vivian walked by with the tray. But the truth didn't matter in this house. In the Sterling household, truth was whatever Beatrice decided it was. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Sterling," Vivian murmured, her fingers brushing against the sharp edge of a porcelain fragment. A bead of blood welled up on her thumb, bright red against the cold white floor. "Sorry doesn't replace a limited edition Wedgwood, you clumsy girl," Beatrice hissed. She was a woman who wore her cruelty like she wore her Chanel suits, tailored, expensive, and suffocating. "Leave it. You'll only make it worse. Go to the kitchen and prep the hors d'oeuvres for tonight. The Rockefellers are coming, and if the canapes are soggy like last time, don't bother showing your face." Vivian stood up, hiding her bleeding hand behind her back. She looked toward the doorway where Harrison was standing. Her fiancé, the man who had swept her off her feet 3 years ago in a coffee shop in Boston, telling her that her lack of family or money didn't matter, that he loved her for her. Harrison looked at his mother, then at the broken cup, and finally at Vivian. He sighed, checking his Rolex. "Just go, Vivian," Harrison said, his voice devoid of warmth. "Mother is stressed about the merger. Don't antagonize her." "I didn't," Vivian started, but the look in his eyes stopped her. It was a look of exhaustion, of boredom. She turned and walked to the kitchen, the heavy oak doors closing behind her, sealing her off from the world of luxury she was supposed to be part of, yet was constantly excluded from. Technically, Vivian was the future Mrs. Harrison Sterling. Practically, she was the unpaid help. It had started slowly. A request to help with the dishes, because the maid was sick. A suggestion that she shouldn't join the dinner parties because she wouldn't understand the nuances of corporate talk. Then, it became explicit. She was moved out of the master suite and into the guest room down the hall because Harrison needed space to think. Now, with the Sterling family fortune teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, a secret they guarded, fiercely tensions were at an all-time high. They needed a bailout, and they were courting investors aggressively. Vivian was just extra baggage. As she chopped cucumbers with mechanical precision, the kitchen door swung open. It was Penelope, Harrison's younger sister, accompanied by Isabella Striving. Isabella was everything Vivian wasn't: loud, old money, and Harrison's ex-girlfriend. Her father owned the hedge fund that the Sterlings were desperate to impress. "Oh, look," Penelope laughed, grabbing a grape from the bowl Vivian had just washed. "The little orphan Annie is hard at work. Honestly, Harrison is a saint for keeping a stray like you around. It's practically charity." Isabella leaned against the counter, sipping a glass of wine that Vivian knew cost more than her entire wardrobe. "It's quaint, really, like having a live-in pet that can peel potatoes. Tell me, Vivian, do you even have a dress for the Legacy Gala next week? Or are you planning to wear an apron?" Vivian gripped the knife handle tighter. "Harrison said he would take me shopping this weekend." The two women exchanged a look of wicked amusement. "Oh, honey," Isabella cooed, stepping closer, the scent of expensive tuberose perfume overwhelming the room. "Harrison is going to be in the Hamptons this weekend with me and my father, discussing business." "He didn't tell you?" Vivian felt the floor drop out from under her. "No, he didn't." "Awkward," Penelope sang. "Well, don't worry. Mom and I found the perfect dress for you in the attic. It's a family heirloom, very traditional." Since you want to be a Sterling so bad, you should look the part of our history. Vivian looked at them, fighting back tears. She had no family to run to, no money of her own, having spent her small savings trying to keep up with their lifestyle in the beginning. She felt trapped. "Thank you, Penelope," Vivian said quietly. "Don't thank me yet," Penelope smirked. "Wait until you put it on." The week leading up to the Sterling Legacy Gala was a blur of degradation. The gala was the social event of the season in New York City, held at the Pierre Hotel. It was where the Sterlings planned to announce their new partnership with Isabella's father, effectively saving their company. Harrison had indeed gone to the Hamptons. He hadn't called Vivian once. When he returned on Thursday, he smelled of sea salt and Isabella's tuberose perfume. "It was strictly business, Vivian," he snapped when she asked, not even looking up from his phone. "Stop being so insecure. It's unattractive. By the way, Mother says she has your dress ready for tomorrow night. Wear it, don't embarrass me." "Harrison, I feel like I'm losing you," Vivian whispered, standing in the doorway of his study. "You're not losing me, you're just suffocating me," he retorted. "Just play your part, Vivian. Be the supportive, quiet partner. That's all I ask. Quiet." That was the operative word. The night of the gala arrived. The house was buzzing with makeup artists and stylists, all there for Beatrice, Penelope, and surprisingly, Isabella, who was getting ready in the guest suite. Vivian was left to her own devices in her room. At 5 p.m., Beatrice marched into Vivian's room, carrying a garment bag. "Here," Beatrice said, tossing it onto the bed. "This was worn by my great-aunt Mildred. It represents the backbone of this family. Since you contribute nothing financially, you can at least contribute symbolically." Vivian unzipped the bag. Her heart sank. It was a dress, yes, but it was hideous. It was a drab, gray wool garment with a high, stiff collar and an apron-like attachment sewn into the front. It looked like something a governess from a bleak 1800s novel would wear. It was frayed at the hem and smelled of mothballs. "Mrs. Sterling, I can't wear this," Vivian pleaded. It's a costume. It is heritage," Beatrice snapped. "If you refuse to wear it, you refuse this family. And if you refuse this family, you can pack your bags and get out tonight. Harrison won't stop me. He's tired of your complaining." Vivian looked at the dress, then at the door. She had nowhere to go, no money for a hotel. She was completely dependent on them. Beatrice knew it. "Fine," Vivian whispered. "Good. We're leaving in the limo in 20 minutes. You'll take the staff car behind us. We can't have you wrinkling our gowns." Vivian put on the dress. It was itchy and ill-fitting. She looked in the mirror and didn't see a fiancé. She saw exactly what they wanted her to be. A joke. A servant. She pulled her hair back into a severe bun, as instructed. As she walked down the stairs, she heard laughter from the foyer. Harrison was standing there in a tuxedo, arm in arm with Isabella, who was wearing a stunning, backless crimson gown by Versace. Beatrice and Penelope were in shimmering gold and silver. They looked like royalty. When they saw Vivian, silence fell. Then Penelope snorted. "Oh my God," Penelope gasped, pulling out her phone to take a picture. "It's even better than I thought." Harrison looked at Vivian, his face twisting in distaste. "Vivian, you look like a maid." Isabella finished for him, smiling cruelly. "A very loyal maid. It's fitting." "Harrison," Vivian said, her voice trembling. "Please, don't make me go like this." Harrison adjusted his cufflinks, looking away. "It's tradition, Vivian. Mother says it's important. Stop making a scene. Just try to stay in the background tonight." They turned and walked out the door, leaving Vivian standing alone in the cold foyer. The driver of the staff car, an older man named Roberts who had always been kind to Vivian, looked at her with pity as she climbed into the back seat of the sedan. "Miss Vivian," Roberts said softly as he started the engine, "you don't have to do this." Vivian looked out the window as the heavy iron gates of the Sterling estate opened. "Yes, I do, Roberts. I have to see this through. I need to see him choose." "Choose what, miss?" "Choose between his family's money and his soul." But as the car merged onto the highway toward the city, Vivian's phone buzzed. It was a number she hadn't seen in 5 years. The area code was Swiss. She stared at the screen, her breath hitching. She hesitated, then swiped to answer. "Hello?" she whispered. A voice on the other end, sharp, commanding, and unmistakably powerful, spoke. "Vivian, it's time. The exile is over. Your grandfather is dead." Vivian froze. "Grandmother? He left you everything, child." The voice of Margot van der Hoven, the Iron Lady of the European diamond trade, crackled through the line. "But there is a condition. You must claim it within 24 hours, or the board seizes control. Where are you?" Vivian looked down at the gray wool dress. She looked at the lights of New York City, approaching in the distance. "I'm in New York," Vivian said, her voice shifting, the tremble disappearing. "And I'm about to walk into a party." "Good," Margot said. "I'm in New York too, at the plaza. I have brought supplies. Stop playing house with those American paupers, Vivian. Come home." Vivian looked at Robert's eyes in the rearview mirror. "Roberts," she said, her voice suddenly crisp and authoritative, a tone Roberts had never heard from her before. "Yes, miss? Don't take me to the Pierre. Take me to the Plaza Hotel, the penthouse entrance." Roberts blinked, confused, but he nodded. "Yes, miss." The car swerved off the exit, away from the Sterling's path. Vivian van der Hoven was done scrubbing floors. Roberts pulled the modest sedan up to the curb of the Plaza Hotel, looking out of place amidst the line of Bentleys and Ferraris. He hurried to open the door for Vivian, his face etched with concern. "Miss Vivian," he said, in a hushed tone, "are you sure about this? The Sterlings, if they find out you're here instead of the Pierre?" Vivian stepped out onto the pavement. The gray wool dress felt heavier now, suffocating, like a physical manifestation of the last 3 years of her life. She looked at Roberts, the only person in that cold house who had ever asked if she was hungry or tired. "Roberts," Vivian said, reaching into her pocket and pulling out the cheap engagement ring. Harrison had given her a cubic zirconia, he claimed, was a vintage heirloom to save money. She pressed it into Robert's hand. "Take the rest of the night off. Go home to your wife. Turn your phone off. If anyone asks, you drop me at the Pierre's service entrance," and I walked in. "But miss, go," she commanded gently. "And thank you." As the sedan pulled away, Vivian took a deep breath and turned toward the gold revolving doors. She didn't look like a guest. She looked like staff who had gotten lost. The doorman moved to intercept her, his hand raised in dismissal. "Service entrance is around the back, miss," he sneered, looking down at her frayed hem. "I am not service," Vivian said, her voice dropping an octave, channeling a tone she hadn't used since she was 18 years old in boarding school in Geneva. "I am Vivian van der Hoven, and my grandmother is expecting me in the Royal Plaza suite. Move." The name hit the doorman like a physical blow. Van der Hoven. It was a name whispered in vaults and auction houses, synonymous with the kind of wealth that owned countries, not just companies. His face paled, and he scrambled to open the door. "My apologies, Miss van der Hoven. Right this way." Vivian walked through the lobby, ignoring the stairs. She took the private elevator to the penthouse. When the doors opened, she wasn't greeted by warmth. She was greeted by a wall of security guards, and sitting in a velvet armchair by the window, overlooking Central Park, a woman with silver hair, cut in a sharp bob, holding a cigarette holder. Margot van der Hoven, the matriarch, the woman who had disowned Vivian's mother for marrying a poor artist, and who had tried to control every aspect of Vivian's life, until Vivian ran away to find herself and live a normal life. "You look absolutely dreadful," Margot said, not rising from her chair. She exhaled a plume of smoke. "That dress is an insult to sheep everywhere." "Hello, grandmother," Vivian said, standing tall, despite the ridiculous outfit. "You were right." Margot turned her head, her steel-gray eyes narrowing. "I usually am. I told you that romantic love is a middle-class delusion. I told you that without your name, you would be eaten alive. And look at you, scrubbing floors for the Sterlings? A family whose entire net worth is less than what I spend on insurance annually? I wanted to see if someone could love me for me," Vivian said, her voice cracking slightly. "Not for the diamonds." "And?" Did he? Vivian thought of Harrison's face earlier that evening. The embarrassment, the way he let his mother dress her in rags, the weekends in the Hamptons with Isabella. No, Vivian whispered. He didn't. Margot stood up. She was 80 years old, but moved with the vigor of a predator. She walked over to Vivian and touched the rough wool of the gray dress with a manicured nail. Then stop crying about it. You ran away to play commoner, and you learned your lesson. Your grandfather is dead, Vivian. The board is circling like sharks. They think I'm too old, and you're too missing. We have a merger to announce on Monday in Zurich. But tonight, Margot smiled, a terrifying, thin expression. Tonight, we remind New York who actually owns the ground they walk on. Margot snapped her fingers. The double doors to the bedroom flew open. A team of 6 people marched out, stylists, hairdressers, and a tailor who Vivian recognized from the cover of Vogue. They were pushing a rolling rack covered in a black velvet sheet. The Sterlings are announcing a partnership with the Archibalds tonight, aren't they? Margot asked, walking to the rack. To save their failing shipping logistics company? Yes, Vivian said. Harrison is going to marry Isabella Archibald to seal the deal. Cute, Margot scoffed. Isabella Archibald. New money. Loud. Tacky. Margot gripped the velvet sheet. You are a Vander Hoven. We do not compete. We conquer. You need to walk into that gala and make sure that when Harrison Sterling looks at you, he realizes he just threw away a kingdom for a parking spot. Margot pulled the sheet down. Vivian audibly gasped. It wasn't just a dress. It was a weapon of mass distraction. It was the Lumière de la Nuit, the light of the night, a gown commissioned by a royal family in the Middle East that had never been delivered due to a coup. It was made of a fabric that didn't exist in stores. Platinum thread, woven into midnight blue silk, so dark it looked like deep space. And scattered across the entire bodice and cascading down the train were 3,000 raw, uncut diamonds, stitched directly into the fabric. It shimmered with a dangerous, heavy brilliance. $10 million, Margot said casually. And that's just the material cost. The necklace is separate. Margot opened a flat leather box on the table. Inside sat the Vander Hoven heart, a 40-carat blue diamond pendant that had been in a vault for 50 years. Go, Margot commanded the styling team. Burn those rags she is wearing. Scrub the sterling stench off her skin. Make her a queen. For the next 2 hours, Vivian was scrubbed, polished, and painted. Her chapped hands, ruined by bleach and dish soap, were massaged with creams that cost more than Harrison's car. Her hair, usually hidden in a messy bun, was blown out into a sleek, old Hollywood wave that cascaded over one shoulder. Her makeup was kept severe, but stunning blood-red lips and eyes sharp enough to cut glass. When she finally stepped into the dress, the weight of it grounded her. It was heavy, armored. It forced her to stand straight. The diamonds caught the light of the chandelier and fractured it into a million rainbows. She put on the necklace, the cold stone resting against her collarbone. She looked in the mirror. The girl who scrubbed floors was gone. The girl who begged for affection was dead. Staring back at her was Vivian Vander Hoven, majority shareholder of the world's largest diamond conglomerate. Grandmother, Vivian said, turning around. How do I get to the Pierre? Margot smirked and picked up her phone. I had your grandfather's Rolls-Royce Phantom airlifted from London this morning. It's downstairs. Make them regret being born, my dear. The grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was a sea of black tuxedos and pastel gowns. The air smelled of expensive champagne and desperation. The Sterling family was holding court near the center of the room, but anyone looking closely could see the cracks in the veneer. Beatrice Sterling was laughing too loudly at the jokes of Mr. Archibald, a portly man with a cigar in his breast pocket. Harrison stood beside Isabella, his hand resting possessively on her waist, but his eyes were scanning the room nervously. Where is she? Harrison muttered to Penelope. She should have been here 20 minutes ago. If she's sitting in the car pouting. Oh, relax. Penelope rolled her eyes, sipping her vodka tonic. Robert's probably got lost, or Vivian is crying in the bathroom because the wool itches. Who cares? She's here to be a prop. As long as she stands in the back during the speeches, it's fine. Isabella leaned in, brushing her chest against Harrison's arm. Forget about the maid, Harrison. Daddy is about to sign the letter of intent. Once he does, your stock jumps 30% by Monday morning. You're saved. Harrison forced a smile. I know. It's just, she has the ring. My mother wants it back after tonight to give to you. Isabella laughed. That little cubic zirconia piece? Please. I wouldn't wear that to clean my pool. But yes, get it back. It's the principle of the thing. The orchestra began to play a waltz. Beatrice tapped a spoon against her champagne flute, signaling for silence. The room, filled with New York's elite, quieted down. Ladies and gentlemen, Beatrice announced, her voice trembling slightly with adrenaline. Thank you for joining us for the Sterling Legacy Gala. We have a very special announcement tonight, a union of two great families. She was interrupted by a commotion at the main doors. Usually, late arrivals scuttled in through the side, but the main double doors, reserved for the entrance of the guests of honor, were being pushed open by two liveried hotel staff who looked terrified. A hush rippled through the back of the room and moved forward like a wave. The music faltered and stopped. What is going on? Beatrice hissed, lowering her glass. Who is interrupting my speech? Maybe it's the governor? Mr. Archibald suggested. It wasn't the governor. First came the flash of the cameras. The paparazzi, who had been waiting outside for the B-list celebrities to leave, had forced their way into the vestibule. The flashes were blinding, a strobe light effect illuminating the figure standing in the archway. She stood silhouetted against the light, the darkness of her dress absorbing the room, while the diamonds stitched into it exploded with brilliance. She looked like she was wearing the night sky. Vivian took a step forward. The sound of her heels on the parquet floor echoed in the silence. She didn't walk, she glided. The dress was a masterpiece of engineering, moving with her like liquid mercury. The deep blue silk hugged her curves Harrison had ignored for years, and flared out into a train that shimmered with every step. Around her neck, the 40-carat blue diamond pulsed, with a cold inner fire. Who is that? Someone whispered loudly. Is that a movie star? Look at that necklace. That's the Van der Hoeven heart. I saw it in a textbook. It's priceless. Harrison squinted, blinded by the stage lights. He saw a woman of impossible beauty, radiating power and wealth. She walked with her chin high, her eyes scanning the crowd with a look of bored amusement. She looked familiar, painfully familiar, but his brain refused to make the connection. The Vivian he knew was a mouse, a servant, a woman who wore gray wool and apologized for existing. This woman was a goddess. Vivian walked straight down the center aisle, the crowd parting for her like the Red Sea. She wasn't looking at the guests. She was looking dead ahead, at the stage, at the Sterlings. As she got closer, Penelope dropped her glass. It shattered, splashing vodka onto her shoes. But she didn't notice. Her mouth was hanging open. No, Penelope breathed. It can't be. Vivian stopped 10 feet from the Sterling family. She stood in the center of the ballroom, the focal point of 500 pairs of eyes. She slowly raised her hand, her left hand, which was now bare, the cheap ring gone, and tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. On her wrist was a bracelet of sapphires that cost more than the Sterling estate. Vivian, Harrison choked out. The name sounded ridiculous in the room, like calling a lion a kitten. Vivian smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had just trapped her prey. Hello, Harrison, she said. Her voice was magnified by the acoustics of the room, clear and bell-like. Sorry I'm late. The traffic from the plaza was murder, and she looked him up and down, then shifted her gaze to Isabella. I had to find something to wear that didn't smell like mothballs. The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Beatrice Sterling turned a shade of purple that clashed violently with her gold dress. She stepped off the low-riser, marching toward Vivian. What is the meaning of this? Beatrice hissed, though she kept her voice low, trying to save face in front of the investors. Where did you get that dress? Did you steal it? Roberts. Where is Roberts? Roberts is off duty, Vivian said coolly. not lowering her voice. She wanted everyone to hear, and I didn't steal the dress, Beatrice. It belongs to my family. Your family? Isabella laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. She stepped forward, linking her arm through Harrison's to mark her territory. You don't have a family, Vivian. You're a stray. A charity case. Harrison picked up. Did you rent this costume? Is this some pathetic attempt to make him jealous? Isabella reached out to touch the fabric of the dress, her fingers grasping. Don't, Vivian said. It was a single word, spoken with such authority that Isabella froze. If you touch this dress with your wine-stained fingers, Vivian said calmly, you will be buying it. And considering your father's hedge fund is currently under audit for liquidity issues, I don't think you can afford the $10 million price tag. Gasps erupted from the crowd. The audit of the Archibald Fund was a rumor, a dark secret. Vivian had just confirmed it on a microphone. Mr. Archibald stepped forward, his face red. Now see here, young lady. I suggest you check your email, Mr. Archibald, Vivian interrupted, turning her gaze to the powerful investor. My lawyers sent over a cease and desist regarding your acquisition of Sterling Logistics 10 minutes ago. What? Harrison stepped forward, panic setting in. Vivian, what are you talking about? Your lawyers? You're a barista. You scrub our floors. Vivian looked at Harrison. For the first time, she felt absolutely nothing for him. No love, no hate, just pity. I scrubbed your floors because I loved you, Harrison. I wanted to build a life with you. I wanted to be a wife, not a portfolio asset. She took a step closer to him, the diamonds on her dress blinding him. But you didn't want a wife. You wanted a maid. You wanted a punching bag for your mother and an ego boost for yourself. You treated me like I was nothing because you thought I had nothing. Vivian reached into her clutch, a solid silver case, encrusted with pearls, and pulled out a business card. It was black with gold embossed lettering. She flicked it at Harrison. It fluttered through the air and landed on the floor at his feet. Pick it up, she whispered. Harrison stared at her, paralyzed. Pick it up. Trembling, Harrison bent down. He picked up the card. He read it. His eyes widened so much they looked like they might pop out of his skull. He looked at the card, then at Vivian, then back at the card. Vivian van der Hoven, CEO and chairwoman. Van der Hoven Diamond Consortium, Zurich. Van der Hoven? Harrison whispered. As in the people who own the mine that produced the diamond in your mistress's ring, Vivian said, nodding at Isabella. Although, looking closely at that stone, that's a synthetic, mid-tier lab-grown, tacky. Isabella looked down at her hand in horror. You're the heiress? Beatrice choked out, clutching her chest. The missing Van der Hoven heiress? I wasn't missing, Beatrice. Vivian smiled icily. I was in your guest room, cleaning up your messes. The crowd began to murmur. Phones were out. Live streams were starting. This was the social collapse of the century. But why? Harrison stammered. If you have billions, why did you stay? Why did you let us treat you like that? Because I needed to know, Vivian said, her voice echoing with finality. I needed to know if you were a good man. I gave you 3 years to prove it. I gave you every opportunity to stand up for me, to defend me against your mother, to be faithful. She gestured to the gray wool dress that she had left in a pile near the entrance, now being sniffed by a passing security dog. You chose the maid's dress for me, Harrison, so I'm returning the favor. I'm buying Sterling Logistics. You're buying us out? Harrison's face lit up with a glimmer of hope. Vivian, darling, we can work this out. If you're buying the company, we can run it together. We're engaged. Vivian threw her head back and laughed. It was a genuine, terrifying laugh. Oh, Harrison, you misunderstood. I'm not buying it to save it. I'm buying the debt. As of this morning, the Van der Hoven Trust purchased all of Sterling Logistics' outstanding loans from the bank. She leaned in close, so only he could hear the kill shot. I'm calling the debt, Harrison, tonight. Immediate repayment in full. Or I seize the assets. The house, the cars, the company, everything. Harrison fell to his knees. Literally, The crushing weight of the reality hit him. He was bankrupt. His family was destitute. And the woman who held the deed was the woman he had sent to the kitchen to chop cucumbers 3 hours ago. "Vivian, please," he begged, grabbing the hem of her $10 million dress. "Don't do this. We're family." Vivian looked down at his hand, touching the platinum fabric. She didn't pull away. She just looked at a security guard standing nearby. "Remove him," she said calmly. "He's touching the merchandise, and he can't afford it." The moment the security guard's hand clamped onto Harrison's shoulder, the spell in the Pierre Hotel ballroom broke. The silence shattered into a cacophony of whispers, gasps, and the frantic clicking of camera shutters. "Get your hands off me!" Harrison shouted, his voice cracking. He tried to shake off the grip, but the guard, a man named Victor, who had once served in the Swiss Guard and was now on Margot van der Hoven's personal payroll, didn't budge. "Do you know who I am? I am Harrison Sterling. This is my engagement party." "Was," Vivian corrected calmly. She stood perfectly still, the Lumière de la Nuit dress catching the strobe lights of the paparazzi. "It was your engagement party. Now, it's a foreclosure proceeding with an open bar." Beatrice Sterling, realizing her son was being physically removed, abandoned all pretense of dignity. She lunged forward, her gold gown rustling violently. Her face was a mask of contorted rage, the makeup settling into the deep lines of stress around her mouth. "You ungrateful little wretch!" Beatrice screamed, raising her hand to strike Vivian. "After everything we did for you, we gave you a roof, we gave you food." Before her hand could make contact, a cane shot out from the side, catching Beatrice's wrist with surprising force. Margot van der Hoven stepped out from behind a pillar, her presence commanding the room. She wore a tuxedo suit of black velvet, smoking a thin cigarette in a holder that was technically illegal indoors, but nobody dared tell her to put it out. "Touch my granddaughter," Margot said, her voice like grinding stones, "and you will lose the hand." Beatrice froze, clutching her wrist. She looked at the older woman, recognizing her instantly from the covers of Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. The blood drained from Beatrice's face. "Margot, Madame van der Hoven," Beatrice stammered. I didn't know." "Ignorance is not a defense, Beatrice," Margot spat, dropping Beatrice's hand as if it were contaminated. "It is a liability. You treated the heir to the Van der Hoven Diamond Syndicate like a scullery maid. You have insulted my blood, and in my world, insults are expensive." Isabella Archibald, watching her social standing evaporate in real time, tried one last desperate maneuver. She stepped away from Harrison, smoothing her red Versace dress, and turned a dazzling, fake smile toward Vivian. "Vivian, darling," Isabella cooed, her voice trembling only slightly. "This is all a terrible misunderstanding, isn't it? I mean, Harrison, he lied to both of us. I had no idea he was treating you this way. I'm a victim here too. Perhaps we can discuss this over lunch? My father and I would love to." Vivian turned her head slowly to look at Isabella. The gaze was withering. "Isabella," Vivian said softly, "you spent the last 6 months mocking my clothes, my hair, and my poverty. You called me a pet. You aren't a victim. You're just a bad investment." Vivian signaled to Victor. "Remove them all. The Sterlings, the Archibalds. Anyone who isn't breathing oxygen, I paid for." "You can't do this," Mr. Archibald roared, his face purple. "I have rights. I have shares. You have debt," Vivian corrected. "And as of 9 a.m. tomorrow, I own it. Now, get out before I have you arrested for trespassing at my private victory party." The security team moved in. It was a humiliating public exodus. Harrison was dragged backward, his heels scuffing the parquet floor, shouting Vivian's name. Beatrice was escorted out, sobbing, clutching her pearl necklace. Isabella and her father were hustled out the side door, shielding their faces from the cameras. As the doors closed behind them, the ballroom fell silent again. The remaining guests, New York's elite, the sharks, the social climbers, stared at Vivian with a mixture of fear and awe. They were waiting to see who she would execute next. Vivian took a deep breath. She felt the heavy platinum of her dress settle against her skin. She walked over to the microphone, Beatrice had abandoned. "Please," Vivian said, her voice steady and regal. "Enjoy the champagne. It's vintage Dom Perignon. I had it flown in to replace the cheap Prosecco the Sterlings were serving. The party isn't over. It's just under new management." The band, sensing the shift in power, immediately struck up a lively jazz number. The crowd erupted into applause, not polite applause, but the raucous, terrified applause of people desperate to stay on the winner's side. Vivian walked off the stage and into the arms of her grandmother. "Well done," Margot whispered, handing Vivian a silk handkerchief. "But don't cry. It ruins the mascara." "I'm not crying for him," Vivian said, wiping a single tear from her cheek. "I'm crying for the girl I used to be. She died tonight." "Good riddance," Margot said. "She was boring. Now, let's go. We have a 6 a.m. meeting with the lawyers. We have a family to bankrupt." The sun rose over Greenwich, Connecticut, casting a cold to gray light over the Sterling estate. It was a beautiful morning, the kind Harrison usually spent playing tennis. Today, however, there would be no tennis. At 7 a.m. sharp, a convoy of black SUVs and 3 large moving trucks, emblazoned with the logo Vanderhoven Asset Recovery, rolled through the iron gates. Harrison, who hadn't slept, watched from the window of the library. He was wearing the same tuxedo from the night before, now rumpled and stained. He held a glass of scotch that had gone warm hours ago. "They're here," he whispered. Beatrice was sitting on the sofa, staring blankly at the wall. "Call the police, Harrison. Tell them it's an invasion." "Mother, they own the police," Harrison snapped, turning away from the window. "Or at least, they own the bank that holds the mortgage on the police station. It's over." The front door burst open. It wasn't the police. It was a team of auditors led by a man named Mr. Silas, a lawyer known in Wall Street circles as the Vulture. Mr. Silas walked into the library, followed by 2 men carrying clipboards and a label gun. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling." "Mrs. Sterling," Silas said cheerfully. "Please remain seated. We are here to inventory the assets against the outstanding debt called last night. Anything not personally attached to your body is now property of the trust." "You can't take our home," Beatrice shrieked, standing up. "Technically, Mrs. Sterling, this isn't your home," Silas said, consulting his clipboard. "You refinanced this property 3 times to cover the losses in the logistics division. You have 0 equity. In fact, you are currently trespassing on Miss Vanderhoven's property. She has graciously allowed you until noon to vacate." "Noon?" Harrison gasped. "That's 4 hours. Where are we supposed to go?" Silas shrugged. "I believe there is a Motel 6 off the interstate. They have reasonable weekly rates." One of the men with the label gun walked over to a Ming vase on the mantelpiece and slapped a red sticker on it. "Seized." Harrison watched in horror as his life was dismantled. The label gun clicked rhythmically, a metronome counting down his demise. The grand piano? Click. Seized. The collection of first edition books? Click. Seized. Beatrice's collection of Fabergé eggs? Click. Seized. "Stop it!" Harrison yelled, grabbing the arm of the man tagging the television. Can I talk to her? Is she here?" "Miss Vanderhoven is in the car," Silas said, pointing through the window to the Rolls-Royce Phantom parked in the driveway. "She is observing. She has no desire to speak with you." Harrison ran. He bolted out of the library, past the movers carrying his own golf clubs, and out the front door. He ran across the gravel driveway toward the Rolls-Royce. The tinted window was rolled up. "Vivian!" Harrison screamed, pounding on the glass. "Vivian, please! Open the window! You can't do this! I loved you!" Inside the car, the interior was silent and smelled of leather and lavender. Vivian sat in the back seat, wearing a crisp white power suit. She looked at Harrison through the glass. He looked pathetic, desperate. "Should I have Victor remove him?" the driver asked. Vivian looked at Harrison's face, distorted by the glass and his own tears. She pressed the intercom button. "Let him speak," she said. She rolled the window down exactly 2 inches. "Vivian," Harrison panted, gripping the top of the window. "Vivian, baby, please. This is insane. You made your point. You're rich. You're powerful. I get it. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the business trouble. I'm sorry about the maid thing. It was just, Mother was so stressed. I was trying to keep the peace. You weren't keeping the peace, Harrison, Vivian said, her voice cool coming through the slit in the window. You were keeping your inheritance. You thought if you appeased her, you'd get the money. You sold me out for a paycheck that never existed. I can change, Harrison pleaded. I'll fire the staff. I'll kick Mother out. Just you and me. We can travel. We can. You'd kick your own mother out? Vivian asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, if it means keeping you. She's a tyrant anyway. I hate her. Vivian let out a short, dry laugh. And that is exactly why we will never be together. A man who would sell his mother for a lifestyle will sell his wife for a better one. Goodbye, Harrison. Wait, wait. Harrison scrabbled at the glass. What about the ring? I bought you a ring. You owe me that back. Vivian paused. She reached into her purse and pulled out the cubic zirconia ring. Oh, this? She asked. Yes. It's a vintage heirloom. It's worth $40 on Amazon, Harrison, Vivian interrupted. I had it appraised the day you gave it to me. I knew then. I just didn't want to believe it. She flicked the ring out the window. It landed in the gravel dust. Keep it, she said. It's the only asset you have left. She pressed the button. The window rolled up, sealing her away. Drive, she told the driver. As the Rolls-Royce pulled away, Harrison fell to his knees in the dust, searching frantically for the cheap ring, while behind him, the movers carried his majestic leather armchair out of the door and tossed it into the truck. 3 weeks later, the dust had settled, but the legal battle was far from over. Harrison and Beatrice were living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, a far cry from the Greenwich estate, but they weren't going down without a fight. They had found a lawyer, a sleazy man named Barry, the Bulldog Cohen, who worked out of a strip mall, who convinced them they had a case. They were suing Vivian for fraud, by omission and emotional distress, claiming that by hiding her wealth, she had entrapped them into treating her poorly, which caused them reputational damage. It was a ludicrous legal theory, but it was enough to get a court date. The meeting for the deposition was held at the offices of Skadden, Arps, Slate, Meager, and Flom in Manhattan. The conference room was all glass and mahogany, overlooking the Hudson River. Harrison walked in, wearing a suit that was clearly off the rack and ill-fitting. Beatrice was beside him, looking haggard but defiant. Vivian sat at the head of the table. She wasn't alone. She was flanked by 5 of the most expensive lawyers in the country, and, surprisingly, Roberts, the old Sterling family driver. This is harassment, Barry the Bulldog announced, slamming a file on the table. My clients have suffered irreparable harm. They are the laughingstock of New York. You tricked them. Vivian didn't look at the lawyer. She looked at Harrison. I didn't trick you, Vivian said. I existed. You created the narrative. But we aren't here to discuss your hurt feelings. We're here to discuss the real theft. We stole nothing, Beatrice snapped. We gave you a home. Vivian slid a folder across the table. Open it. Harrison opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of old documents, yellowed with age, and a photograph of a young woman wearing a gray wool dress, the exact same dress Beatrice had forced Vivian to wear to the gala. Do you recognize that woman? Vivian asked. That's Great-Aunt Mildred, Beatrice sniffed. The backbone of the family. The dress you insulted. That is not Great-Aunt Mildred, Vivian said. That is Sarah Roberts, my great-grandmother, and Robert's grandmother. Harrison looked at Roberts, the driver, who was sitting stoically, with his hands folded. What? Harrison asked. Your family didn't just employ staff, Vivian said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Your grandfather, the original Sterling, made his fortune in the 1920s not by shipping, but by stealing the patent for a navigational gyroscope from his valet, a man named Thomas Roberts. Vivian pointed to the photo. Thomas and Sarah Roberts were destitute because your family stole their invention. Sarah had to work as a maid in the very house her husband's invention paid for. She wore that gray dress. It wasn't a symbol of your family's hard work, Beatrice. It was a trophy. a symbol of your family's cruelty. You kept it to mock them. Beatrice went pale. That's ancient history. You can't prove that. I don't need to prove it to a jury, Vivian said. I bought the patent records. I bought the company that originally manufactured it. And most importantly, Vivian turned to Roberts. I bought the Sterling estate, and I deeded it to the only living descendant of Thomas Roberts. Harrison's jaw dropped. You gave the house to the driver? Mr. Roberts isn't just a driver anymore, Vivian smiled. He is the owner of the Sterling Manor. He plans to turn it into a foundation for underprivileged inventors. And the guest house? The one you forced me to live in? Vivian leaned forward. He's renting it out. I believe the rent is reasonable. If you two need a place to stay, I'm sure Roberts would be happy to let you scrub the floors in exchange for room and board. Harrison looked at Roberts, the man he had ignored for 20 years, the man he hadn't even tipped at Christmas. Roberts looked back, a small, dignified smile on his face. The uniform is in the laundry, Mr. Sterling, Roberts said. I expect the silver to be polished by 6. This is insane, Beatrice screamed. I won't do it. I won't work for the help. Then starve, Vivian said, standing up. Because I have also blocked you from every country club, every charity board, and every high society function in the Northern Hemisphere. You are persona non grata. The only way you stay in Greenwich is if you work for it. She buttoned her jacket. We're done here. 6 months later, the winter snow had fallen over Greenwich. The Sterling Manor looked beautiful, its windows glowing with warmth, but inside, the atmosphere had changed. It was no longer a cold museum of pretension. It was a bustling center of learning, full of young students on scholarships funded by the Roberts van der Hoeven grant. In the kitchen, the air smelled of lemon polish and regret. Harrison Sterling, wearing a gray custodial jumpsuit, was on his knees. He was scrubbing the grout between the tiles, near the stove. His hands were raw, his knuckles cracked from the cold, and the chemicals missed a spot, a voice said. Harrison looked up. It was Penelope, his sister. She was wearing an apron and carrying a tray of dirty dishes from the students' dining hall. She looked tired, her hair frizzy and unkempt, but there was a strange resolve in her eyes. She had accepted her fate faster than Harrison. Shut up, Penny, Harrison grunted, dipping his brush back into the bucket. Is Mom still crying in the laundry room? No, Penelope said, scraping leftovers into the bin. Roberts fired her, said she was shrinking the wool sweaters on purpose. She's taking the bus to the city to try and sell her story to a tabloid, but nobody's buying. They're all too obsessed with Vivian's wedding. Harrison froze. Wedding? Penelope pulled a crumpled newspaper out of her apron pocket and tossed it onto the wet floor. Harrison wiped his hands on his jumpsuit and picked it up. The headline read, Diamond Heiress Weds Tech Mogul in Paris. There was a photo. It was Vivian. She looked radiant, happier than Harrison had ever seen her. She was wearing a simple, elegant white dress, no diamonds, just pure joy. Beside her was a man Harrison recognized from the business pages, a self-made billionaire known for his philanthropy and his kindness. A man who looked at Vivian not like she was an asset, but like she was the sun. Harrison stared at the photo. He looked at Vivian's smile. It was the smile he had tried to extinguish, the smile he had taken for granted. He looked around the kitchen where he had sent Vivian to chop vegetables while he laughed with Isabella. Now, he was the one on the floor. The irony wasn't lost on him. It was a crushing weight, heavier than any diamond. Harrison, Roberts's voice boomed from the hallway. The driveway needs shoveling. Guests are arriving. Harrison dropped the newspaper. He looked at it one last time, watching the soapy water soak into Vivian's face, blurring her happiness until it was just a memory. Coming, Mr. Roberts, Harrison said. He stood up, grabbed his shovel, and walked out into the cold. Vivian van der Hoeven proved that true worth isn't found in a bank account, but in how you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer you. The Sterlings loved money so much they lost the only thing that could have saved them, genuine love. They wanted a maid, and they got one themselves. And as for that $10 million dress, Vivian auctioned it off last week. Every cent went to a charity that helps women escape abusive relationships and build their own empires. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't just living well, it's making sure no one else has to suffer the way you did. If you enjoyed this story of karma and diamonds, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story about justice served cold. What would you have done if you were Vivian? Would you have forgiven Harrison, or did he get exactly what he deserved? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.